Welcome back. It is episode 4 of season 2 of the SAC Super Acquaintances Baseball Podcast. Uh, Two acquaintances here today. We're not sure if a third is going to be joining us. We'll see if TJ wants to take time out of his busy schedule, playing Rocket League and all that good stuff to join us. We'll see. Eric, what's been up with you? How was your weekend? Watch some baseball. And also, what
Uh,
is that on your desk? I'm looking at a chicken.
it's a
Right?
chicken hanging out in the float. He's got his cool little chicken Ray-Bans on. I was at a party at a beach house, and I needed a memento from the house. I was with our good buddy Grant Bickham. We partied on what was it? Figure Eight Island from the same Outer Banks Island. We drove past Michael Jordan's house. It was pretty baller.
Where is that? Because I've been to the Outer Banks many times, but I didn't know
It's
about.
where is it? I want to say it was down by Wilmington area. That's
Okay,
how we got to it.
that makes
I don't really
sense.
remember.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of the Outer Banks on the east side of North Carolina are much more like remote. It makes sense that he's got something outside of Wilmington where there's actually like a
Yeah.
city.
Well, it's weird to get to like the actual Outer Banks. You have to go like up into Virginia, like two
Yeah,
hours, and then come back down. When it really like on a map, it's only like 20 miles away.
right.
But it's like
Yeah.
4 hours drive to get there.
But they're great beaches though. I kind of like how they're kind of more isolated. You get out there and you feel like I'm the only person on the beach right now.
I've never woke up hungover in a more peaceful place.
If only that could fix it all. Well, you know who was in a peaceful place this weekend? I can only presume that Tennessee head coach Tony Vitellio was taking in the weekend action from a very peaceful place, a quiet place, if you will. Um, our boy Tony V got popped. He actually got popped by internal
Yeah,
forces,
I
I
don't
would
think
say.
did they ever say why? I don't think they ever
So
said why.
yeah, I'll read. This is from the University of Tennessee statement. So it was a self suspension for just the 3 game series they had versus Dayton this weekend at home. The self suspension stems from the tampering inquiry from the NCAA involving Maui Ahuna, as we previously
Oh,
reported.
that's right.
Yes, so that does clear up why Tennessee projected starting shortstop Maui Ahuna was ineligible to play in the first 2 series of the season. This is a quote from Outkick. According to multiple coaches who talked with Outkick, the overwhelming sentiment is that the tampering is occurring more frequently at Power Five schools than in the past, thanks to the new transfer rules. The NCAA allows a one-time transfer for student athletes with 2 separate portal periods in the summer and the winter. If you aren't having someone make that phone call, somebody else has most likely already called them twice, says one Power Five head coach. It's your loss, but the new transfer rules only made this easier to find players to fill key spots. I'm surprised the school would risk inviting the poorly run NCAA into their house by squealing on someone else. End of the quote here. The That coach is assuming that an opposing school asked the NCAA to investigate Tennessee for its recruitment of Ahuna, so which they say is a logical conclusion to draw. So it's definitely interesting. The first kind of we're hearing about this messiness from all the transfer portal, but the good news is that Maui tweeted today, yesterday, as you're listening to this, that he is free. That Suppah man is back.
Well, didn't he transfer initially somewhere else before Tennessee out of Hawaii?
Yeah, he was with Kansas last year,
Yeah, weird.
but I didn't know. I didn't know that if that was a 1 year type deal. But yeah, so aside from all that, Tennessee actually kind of got back into form. Their opening weekend was pretty shaky. Dayton, not such a great opponent, but they looked a lot better. Dollander gave up a home run in the first inning, but settled down, ended up getting 12 punchies in 5 2/3 innings pitched. And one of my favorite clips I saw from the weekend, actually, a Tennessee freshman, Jake Kendra, just pulled the absolute shit out of a foul ball to left field. It got called. Did you see this clip? It got called a foul ball, and they reviewed it. Ultimately, decided it was in fact a home run. So umpire, comes out, gives the finger circle, and then the player gets back in the box, fakes a swing, and then does a big bat
Oh,
flip like Tennessee style.
who was it the Nationals that had that happen?
I remember there was
It's
an
like
MLB, but
eight,
I can't remember
ten,
which one.
8, 10 years ago.
Yeah, but yeah, it
I'm
was
adding
funny.
some years because everything feels like yesterday.
The Dayton pitcher was not having that, or they're not a fan.
Imagine you give up an actual tank and then you got to come back and watch him hit a fake tank so you can run the
Yeah,
bases.
really, really, just messing it the second time. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Obviously, it makes sense to serve like a self suspension against Dayton when like you're gonna be fine pretty much at home.
Yeah.
Tennessee looks a lot better. It looked a lot better this weekend than they did last weekend. Um, Other big story, I would say, went on down in Round Rock, Texas, number one team in the country. How did LSU do this weekend, Eric?
So they won the tournament, but they were tied with two of the four teams in the tournament, and they won based off of run differential. But they got taken down by Iowa, who honestly won the tournament because you come in as LSU, the number one ranked team. You're the favorite to win the tournament. You're the favorite to win it all at the end of the season. And you're playing teams like Iowa, like you should be undoubtedly the champion and go 3-0 of that tournament. So I think Iowa truly won the tournament. And it shows in some of the rankings. Some rankings have them at that 24, 25,
Yeah, I
just
mean
based off of that win.
it's easy to dismiss a little bit. Did you see the starting pitcher for Iowa that day?
Oh, was it Brody Brecht?
Yeah, Brody Brecht. So starting wide receiver for the Hawkeyes comes on the mound, blowing hundos and wipe out sliders.
Dude,
Um,
people are saying that he is essentially going to be the next Steven Strasburg. Like
wow,
teams
that
will
is
be teams will be tanking to get that pick to get Brody Brecht, and he will be like one of the highest touted prospects when he
really
gets drafted.
just from the arm strength, or like because I mean, he didn't do great. I mean, he he shut LSU down. Like he had six strikeouts in three and a third innings, but he had eight walks. Very very wild. And credit to Jared Simpson was the reliever that actually got the win for the Hawkeyes. He went four and two thirds and um, with eight punchies. But where did it was that just on like Twitter, or was that where
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter, but I think part of it might be just purely arm strength because I think this kind of like where the ego of a coach comes in, where it's like I see the raw talent, I can fine tune everything when really you have no idea if you can fine tune everything. So I think part of that is why he's so highly touted as a pitching prospect.
Yeah, just like a raw as it gets pitching prospect. I'm throwing 100, and hopefully the mechanics can be improved a little bit. I will say so in game one, LSU played Kansas State. Paul Skeens, the standout from week one, they made him work a little bit in the first inning there. He gave up a couple of hits, an RBI, a walk, but got two punchies to end the inning. Settled in after that, and LSU, as you said, took the weekend after that. Game one victory. They did drop game two to Iowa, but came in and finished the job. Game three.
So going back to our Thursday conversation about LSU and Wake Forest, who's number one? Does LSU dropping a game to Iowa and Wake Forest just dropping dick for 3 games? Does that switch your 1 and 2 for you?
Man, I think off the top of my head, ranking just purely on how they've done so far, I would say yes. I mean, Wake Forest hasn't done it against any legitimate talent. I mean, the highest RPI they're playing this next week, I think it's like 195 or something like that. So they really have not had any um, respectable competition, truly.
Yeah, and if I'm not
Well,
mistaken, they don't start playing like the powerhouse
actually,
ACC until the end of the season, really.
I want to walk that back a little bit. One of the teams, and I'm going to talk about them in a general sense in a few minutes, but Illinois went down and beat Southern Miss at Southern Miss on the road. Um, major upset there. Southern Miss was supposed to be one of the, and they still are one of the best mid-major programs in the country, but they were going to be vying for super regional. They were a regional host last year. But the reason I bring that up is because Wake Forest, just they beat the ever living shit out of everybody they've played so far. But Illinois, they played for 2 games the opening weekend, and we were kind of saying that they were. I was
they
just saying that
outscored
they
them.
hadn't played any competition.
Yeah, they outscored them 18-2
Yeah.
over 2 games.
So I think the level of dominance we're seeing on both sides of the ball, that is something I want to highlight. I mean, this weekend it was just ridiculous. Their top two pitchers, Sean Sullivan and Rhett Lauder, just like they have like MLB comps for me. Like watching Sean Sullivan pitch, he's like a Chris Sale, like left side 3/4 delivery with just a filthy slider, and Rhett Lauder like with the hair and the kind of like rhythmic motion kind of reminds me of Mike Clevenger before Mike Clevenger got bad and became a shitbag human being.
Once you started hanging out with Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, and started shooting or beating kids and stuff. But anyway, they just absolutely dominated on Friday. Rhett Lauder actually tossed an immaculate inning. Sean Sullivan 11 Ks and no hits in 6 innings. So, and then they played a doubleheader on Saturday. They outscored their opponents 57-4 on the weekend. So I want to contextualize how they're playing right now. They are right now running with a scoring margin, so average scoring margin per game of 12 runs. For context, last year Tennessee led the league at 6.5, and Rutgers was the next best at 4.9. So Wake Forest is just pummeling people. And one of my favorite quotes I saw, I don't know if you saw this, their Coach Walter, said after Friday that they're getting 2 home run happy. And then on Saturday, I think they put up 18 runs on 20 hits and only 1 home run. So they're really
That's nuts.
Doing it. And I mean,
doing literally everything.
Yeah. So they definitely lead the list of teams that took care of business this week. And I would say, based on the performance so far, I think they would deserve the #1 spot over LSU. Doesn't mean they are going to have more postseason success, but purely based on if those two teams are to play right now, I think I would give Wake Forest a shot just because their pitchers are just carving people up and they're putting up more runs per game than anybody else in the league.
I definitely agree with that.
Speaking of the rankings, how did you notice anything interesting about the rankings this week?
So there was a lot of outrage on D1 baseball's rankings post.
As there always is.
Everyone hates Kendall Rogers. It's a known thing.
Well, he hates my team, of course.
Yeah, they have 4-3 Oklahoma State, UNC, and Texas A&M at 12, 13, and 15. So people were angry about that. And then the one that got the most outrage was 3-4 Maryland, dropped from 13 to 18, ahead of undefeated Virginia, who's just destroying people, undefeated Alabama, who is also just putting the throttle down on people, undefeated NC State, 7-1 Miami, undefeated South Carolina, who, as we said, I think on the first episode, the big question mark last year was pitching, and they would show up against big name teams and then drop the ball against lesser schools, where they've just been taking care of business so far through the first 2 weeks. And my biggest pet peeve with these rankings is Texas Tech is 8-0, went 4-0 in 2 different series against Gonzaga and Western Illinois, who Western Illinois put up a decent fight in one of their games against LSU. Texas Tech blew them out in 3 games, and I think the closest game was like 3 runs. And Texas Tech has not moved in the rankings. They're still 24 at 8-0.
I'm glad you brought up Texas Tech. One of my overreaction statements is around Texas Tech, actually, the Red Raiders. But I think one of the biggest points you raised was about Maryland being 3-4 and still kind of getting the benefit of the doubt. I think it is a little they while they certainly may return to their rankings, I think it's a little bit inappropriate right now based on their record so far. You think
Yeah,
about their
and
schedule, or go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say they played Ole Miss this weekend,
Yeah,
and they had, I think it was either the Friday night or Saturday night game. They had like 10 walks through like 6 or 7 innings, and they had Ole Miss, which should have been dead to rights for that game, and let Ole Miss come back in the last 2 to 3 innings, which to me doesn't say, yeah, Ole Miss is the number 14, but if you also have a ranking next to your name, like you can't be letting teams walk back like that, especially when you get walked 10 times. That's basically Ole Miss saying, "Hey, Maryland, here's the game. You can have this one," and they still couldn't capitalize on that.
yeah. Did Maryland, they dropped their opening series to Campbell, right? Was that, did they win the
Yes.
series?
No, I don't know.
Check real quick. Let me make sure we're not
And then
saying anything that's
I
bullshit.
got I got one more team I want to highlight once we get done with this Maryland stuff that I put in my personal top 25. I was directed by the great Travis Entrop when I sent these rankings in our group chat. Post that to your personal account, please.
I haven't spent enough time on rankings to feel like comfortable enough sharing them yet. Um, wow, I was just completely wrong. I don't know who Campbell played. Oh, it was Rutgers that Campbell beat. Sorry. Yeah, Maryland, they went down to USF opening weekend and won that series. They lost the opening weekend or midweek to West Virginia. That's what I was thinking of because West Virginia played very well this weekend. And then, as you said, lost the series to Ole Miss. They did get a great
Oh,
Friday performance. Yeah, go ahead.
it was the Saturday night game because if they would have won the game that I had watched, they would have clinched the series because they won Friday night. Ole Miss handed them a game that they couldn't finish, and then ended up losing the series.
Yeah, and they came close to coming back on Sunday. Like I saw, they were just a few feet away from a grand slam that could have taken the lead. But it's pretty poetic. The Maryland on Friday, they got their fourth grand slam in their first 5 games, and then they lose the series on a walk-off grand slam to get run ruled on Sunday. So kind of just poetic justice right there. But to your point, a little bit high in the rankings for sure. Um, Couple other teams I want to shout out that took game one on the road, but then the home team kind of bounced back. Arizona State blew out Mississippi State in game one. Like Mississippi State was walking people with bases loaded and stuff. But Mississippi State actually bounced back and won that series at home. So credit to the Bulldogs. They looked a lot better in those 2 games. One of my favorites, actually, I want to talk about. Virginia Tech took their series against Bryant, but on Friday, Coleman Picard, in his second career start, punched out 12 Hokie batters in 5 innings. Just an awesome performance. Like I saw the clips, 2 really good off-speed pitches and a fastball that when he threw it at 89 after setting up all with the off-speed pitches, it looked like 99 coming in on the hands. So shout out to him. Virginia Tech does bounce back though. Drew Hackenberg has 10 strikeouts in 7 innings on Saturday. And then this is a fun name. Chris Canizaro hits for the cycle on Sunday, but it was not the most impressive cycle of the weekend. We'll quickly mention one of the most incredible standout performances of the weekend. Northern Kentucky, Liam McFadden Ackman hit for the cycle by the sixth
That's
inning against Western Michigan. But
that's a
in the
name right
first inning,
there.
yeah, it is. But in the first inning, he hit 2 home runs, both of which were grand slams. I think people were saying that that's only been done twice ever in history before. So he was like all over Sports Center and stuff. What a game! What a performance! A cycle with
But
2
wasn't
grand
wasn't there
slams.
Was that the one where he hit 2 grand slams in like the first inning?
Yes, in the first
Yeah.
inning. Yeah, it
Yeah. Nuts.
was absolutely crazy. Um,
Uh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say one team that I didn't see getting any love anywhere on anybody's rankings or being talked about at all was the New Mexico Lobos. They started off their season beating Oregon State. Well, they split 2 games with Oregon State opening weekend with a total run differential of 2 runs. They won 7-2 and then 14-6. So they got outscored by 2 runs. And then they beat UC Santa Barbara, who just swept Oregon at Oregon. And then they played Northern Colorado this weekend, where on Friday they took game one with a total score of 30 runs for New Mexico to 1 run for Northern Colorado. Then proceeded to keep it going 11-3 or 11-3 against them on Saturday, and in a doubleheader actually, and then beat them 18-2 in 7 innings later that day. So, and as I mentioned, after opening weekend, they were number one on strength of schedule and RPI. So
Yeah,
to
you know what's
me,
crazy? Yeah, my bad, my bad.
I say to me, that's a top 25 team right there.
So, I mean, that's a pretty good resume considering this point in the season. What is crazy about that Friday night game? One of their hitters, Reed Spenrath, hit 3 home runs in the first 4 innings, and then got pinch hit for. Like he didn't get to finish the game after hitting 3 home runs in his first three at bats.
Maybe they just felt bad for him. I
I
don't
think
know.
you want to get a lot of guys at bats this early on in the season, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine, and maybe we'll learn a little bit more about it in the future. But that's got to be a tough feeling, like knowing
Yeah,
that you're
I mean,
swinging that hot of a stick, and then getting
they
told
got
sit
two
ride the pine.
yeah, yeah, they got 2 guys who only have 1 home run but have 14 RBIs in Jeff David and Lenny Ashby. Let's look at
Crazy.
their pitching. Their highest whip in their starting rotation 1.5, 1.5, 0.8, 1.08, 1.6, 1.25, 0.8, 1, 0.8, 3.3 is their highest whip out
That's
of
pretty
their
high though.
well that all the others are
Yeah.
sub 1 or under 1 ERAs. They got 2 starters with a 0 ERA. Or I guess not two
Okay.
starters, 2 relievers with 2 innings pitched. Let's see. Like their highest ERA aside from 2 guys that pitched not well in one appearance is mid twos. It's probably their average.
I mean, New Mexico, number 9 right now in terms of scoring margin per game at 7.6.
Well,
I mean, right up there.
having a 30-1 game really
It does
really
help.
helps pad
Does
that a
help
little bit.
matters.
But I'm
um,
I'm I'm interested to see if because beating Oregon State that's a big statement win, especially opening weekend. And then the UC Santa Barbara win is looking even better now since the Guachos just went and swept Oregon.
I think it's the Gauchos, not
Is it the Gout?
the Guacos.
The UC Santa Barbara Guacamoles.
The Gauchos had a very good weekend. Swept Oregon on the road. They joined a couple other teams that had very good road performances this weekend. We mentioned Illinois heading down to Mississippi and really taking it to a very good Southern Miss pitching staff. And in fact, Southern Miss had to walk off game 2 to avoid a sweep at home. And this is a regional host team we are talking about here from last year.
Oh, there was
Um,
another team that got swept at home.
Who's that?
Texas A&M at the old Bluebell Park.
That actually is not true. They
Or
got
no, they didn't get
scored.
swept. They what
They
was it,
scored
2
three runs in the bottom of the ninth inning to
Yeah,
walk
that's
off
right.
game
On
3
Sunday
to
night.
avoid a sweep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, yeah.
and D1 has them at 15 after losing to
Yeah.
Portland.
That's wicked high, considering their start to the season. I'm going to talk about them a little bit later too. A couple other teams. West Virginia went out to Tucson and took Arizona down on the road. Want to highlight here, JJ Weatherholt was 3 for 6 in the Friday night game with a home run and stole home in the top of the 11th inning to win it. So you love to see that, especially just talking to Tyler Finke and hearing about his
Oh
steal of
yeah,
home story. And then game two, Blaine Traxel, CG, only one run, which is awesome. Last one is might be the most impressive one. Florida State went into Fort Worth and shut down a Horned Frog offense that was electric in opening weekend in Globe Life Park.
it was very reminiscent of when TCU went to Tallahassee last season.
Yeah.
I guess place doesn't matter for them.
Yeah, really. I mean, it was crazy. Game one, they only allowed, I think, one run. Really great pitching. Still got and they only lost the one game 3-2 and got a great starting pitcher performance. So FSU climbed a lot of people's boards, and I think deservedly so, considering the pitching performance they gave against such a talented lineup.
Yeah, Florida State moved up more spots than A&M moved down spots.
Yeah. Um, one of the best series, and unfortunately, it was only a set of games and not a series of the weekend, though. I don't know if you get to watch much of this. This was the series I think I watched the most of. ECU and UNC. They were originally playing a 3-game series split between their two locations. Saturday's game had to be rescheduled because of rain. ECU, game one, the crowd, they had 200 more people there than their super regional game two against Texas last year. Sold out crowd, 6,000 people. Was a wild atmosphere. They had a great comeback victory in game one. And then Sunday, game two, they did the same thing. They went down and then a great comeback victory. And did you get to watch any of this series?
I watched the highlights. I didn't
Yeah.
watch the actual games.
I think this was a very loud series for me for both UNC and ECU, only from the perspective of ECU or excuse me UNC. I'm a little concerned about only because they got great starting pitching efforts in both games. Max Carlson went 7 innings pitched, did not give up a run, punched out 9 batters, and Connor Bovair went 5.2 innings with 6 strikeouts. And then ECU surrendered multiple run leads in both games. So that is pretty concerning when you talk about a team that wants to be competing, for an ACC title, a team that won the ACC tournament last year and earned a regional host spot. But also, I think it says just as much about ECU. And I was very, very impressed with their plate approach. I saw a lot of 2-strike approaches, a lot of doing things right. Like they went 4 for 9 with runners in scoring position. And before the big hit, Jacob Starling got the go-ahead base hits in both games, 2 RBI singles in both games. But the at-bat before him in game one, Jacob Wilcoxon, the catcher that just had absurd numbers in weekend one, hit a sac fly with 1 out when runners on first and second before that at-bat to move him to second and third, set up that 2 RBI single. So just I'm very, very impressed with ECU's lineup and pitching staff. I think there are 6 in the D1 rankings this week and
9.
9. I don't know. I think they might deserve to be higher. They played very, very well in what felt in watching like a regional environment.
Well, I think we can agree that D1's top 10 is a little
sus right now.
off. I mean, they have LSU at 1, understandable. Stanford at 2, Tennessee at 3, Ole Miss at 4, Wake Forest, Florida at 6, Vandy, which I question them in the top 10. I think they're a fringe top 10 team.
I mean,
Arkansas, ECU, and then TCU rounding out the 10s.
I don't know.
Vandy
looked really good this weekend though.
But they also looked really bad
in one game
7 days ago.
Yeah, but in one game, right? They only lost the one game against TCU, right?
And then they lost to they got walked off by
that's
Campbell.
right. That's true. Yeah, well, okay. I will say they looked really good against UCLA. UCLA was one of the most prolific offenses in weekend one. Played a very, very close series. They only allowed 4 runs all weekend to that UCLA lineup. So very impressive stuff from them. They're not killing the baseball, I will say. So that is a bit of a concern but again, UCLA is a much better pitching staff than the, you know, Mount St. Mary's that Wake Forest is facing in the
This
Western
is
Michigans
this is
that
very true.
LSU is facing. So do want to shout out Enrique Bradfield Jr. Broke the Vanderbilt all-time stolen bases record in the series, 97 career stolen bases, and building on it this year. We'll see how close Tyler Finke can get to that mark. Quickly going over a couple of teams that just took care of business. Oregon State swept Canisius. Not a great team there. They moved to 5-1. Campbell sweeps Butler. Georgia Tech are up in my Jackets because they are one of the undefeated teams left remaining. They swept Tennessee Tech at home. I'm not really making a stink. I saw a couple of Jackets fans up in arms that they're not ranked yet. And to be honest, I have no faith in their pitching until they do it against someone
A premier team.
legitimate. Yeah. And then one of the more viral moments from the weekend, Florida swept Cincinnati as Jac Caglianone, I think is how you say his name, just put on a show. Did
Oh,
you see what he did on Sunday?
Yeah, 3 home runs in a game that he started in, and all 3 home runs had above a 110 exit velo.
Yeah. So
Absolutely destroying that baseball.
he wasn't super sharp on the mound, but when you're throwing 97 with wicked off speed stuff, you know you can get better as the season goes on. And if he becomes like if his command improves just to average, like that's a Friday night ace for a lot of teams in the country. And you add that into the fact that he's dropping 3 nukes up to 118 miles an hour off the bat. That is Golden Spikes stuff right there.
I mean, he's doing what I think people expected Paul Skeens to be doing right now.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, now credit to Skeens. He's been one of the best, if probably the best pitcher in the country so far this season. But not swinging the stick that Caglianone is.
No.
So two different sides of the same thing. But yeah, always impressive when you see a guy hit 3 home runs in a game. Even more impressive when it's a game that he's starting. I've got one last team I want to shout out this weekend. Grand Canyon. They didn't have a great midweek, and they didn't look like didn't put up a ton of runs in the opening weekend.
They're not the Grand Canyon we got accustomed to last season.
But you know what though? I will say, like, this weekend, they are not a team that I will be wanting to come into a regional against. Game 1 against Gonzaga, they went down 16-11, so obviously a slugfest there. But in the 8th inning, they put up a 6 spot in the bottom of the 8th inning to win the game 17-16. And then in a doubleheader, they went scoreless through 6 innings against Ohio State and walked it off with a 2-run shot from Zac Gregory, who was actually a graduate transfer from Arkansas last year. So I do like teams that show a propensity to win close games. Like, I think that says a lot about
team that
you.
Fights.
Yeah. So credit to GCU there. Yeah.
They got Texas State coming up this weekend, so
yeah, which
we'll see what they really look like.
Showing some cracks though. Texas State dropped their series to Oral Roberts at home, which is kind of a shock. But
yeah, they really don't have like a super tough schedule.
GCU or Texas State?
GCU. They got Texas State this weekend. A couple of midweeks against Arizona State in a midweek. The every year midweek against Texas Tech in Lubbock this time, which didn't go my way last season. They play the Dirtbags in a 2-game weekend set. Baylor, what a disappointment they've started off at. They came out hot last year.
This is a perfect segue into I'm gonna give you a couple teams and you tell me whether it's too early to hit the panic button. And for Baylor, I'm gonna combine this one. So it's a time to hit the panic button yet for Baylor, and I will add in one of my overreactions, and or you can tell me if this is an overreaction or not. Baylor will be the worst Power Five team this year in college baseball.
Oh, I mean, definitely going to be the worst team in the Big 12. I mean, they lost to Central Michigan, got swept by Duke. I
A
definitely
Duke
think they'll
team
be
that
the
was at the
worst.
bottom of the ACC last year.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll be the worst team in the Big 12. To say worst team in the Power Five, 'cause, I mean, you got a couple ACC teams that are not very good.
Not
Got
that
some,
level.
you got
Well,
some,
I guess Boston College maybe.
you got some Big Ten teams that are not very good.
Yeah, let me
They're,
contextualize this a little bit. So Baylor right now, out of 302 teams that have played so far, they are 290th in their scoring margin. They are losing on average by 7.5 runs per game. Now,
I mean, but I know one team they'll be better than
yes,
because there's one team that was reported yesterday to only have a head coach, and that's Northwestern. And it's
yes.
hard to win when two coaches literally 2 weeks into the season just go, "Hey guys, I'm out."
I don't know if it was "Hey guys, I'm out" so much as it was "You guys suck. Get the hell out of here." Um,
Yeah,
because I think for the overreaction, that's correct. I think it's going to be a battle between Northwestern and Baylor. Northwestern
yeah.
right now losing games by an average of 8.8 runs per game. They have yet to break into the victory column. And the one thing I'll say, Baylor versus Northwestern, Baylor is going to play a lot more better teams, I think, in the Big 12 than the Big 10. You can make the argument that Baylor intrinsically may have a little bit more talent just because of their recruiting location, but man, like those two teams, I think pretty clearly it's time to hit the panic button for Baylor.
And if I'm not mistaken, Baylor had a lot of guys leave after last season. Another shortstop who was at the beginning of the season a contender for the Golden Spikes, Jac Pineda, he left. I think they had two pitchers leave.
Yeah, not a good situation in Waco right now.
Not at all.
They
They're looking
need a
like Baylor
fixer upper
football.
real quick.
Maybe the baseball team's just a lot like the football team where they just have one or two wonder years. And then you're like,
Yeah.
do you guys remember when Baylor was good at sports?
They need some shiplap ASAP.
They need
Um,
something to get started out there.
so moving on, one team we mentioned already, Texas A&M. They have to walk off Portland in Game 3 to avoid a sweep at home. Schlossnagel gets tossed in Game 1. Is it time to? And this is after they dropped midweek to Lamar this week.
Yeah,
Is
they
it
did
time to
not have a
panic for
good
the
7 days.
Aggies? Is it time to panic? Is it too early to panic?
So if I'm isolating these last 2 weeks, I would say yes. But we saw kind of the same thing from them last year, where we kind of were like, this team is not very good. And then the end of the season, they just put it together
Yeah,
and we're just beating everybody they played in the last half of the season. So I think right now, if you have that panic button and you got the little case over it, you're flipping the case up, but you're not quite pressing it yet. You're just getting ready for it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a great reminder, and that my take on it is it is an overreaction. And last year is a perfect example. I have a concrete memory of them dropping a home series, may have been swept to Penn, who turned out to be a pretty decent team last year. I don't know if the same is going to be said about Portland, um, but yeah, it too early in the season. Their pitching is still has done pretty well. Their lineup just isn't hitting right now, which hitting can come and go. So not looking good for the Aggies. Definitely, I think ranked too high based on their results this year so far, but too early to hit the panic button, especially with Schlossnagel at the helm there.
well, and you got to think like they're in the SEC. Their schedule in the next 2 weeks by mid-March is about to get tough.
Wickedly harder for sure.
Let's take a look at it real quick. So
We
they
got to
got
figure it out real quick.
yeah, they don't have time to play around. They just lost to Lamar, Portland. They got HCU. And then next week is this weekend is the Shriners Classic where they're playing number 14 ranked Louisville and number 24 ranked Texas Tech. So if they don't, this could be another bad weekend for them. You have two back-to-back bad weekends, and then they got
You said
LSU
they're
two
playing
weeks.
Louisville in a series.
No, it's the
Oh,
Shriners Classic. So they're going down to
ah,
Houston, and
gotcha.
it's Louisville, Rice, Texas Tech, A&M, Michigan. I forget who the other team is. Six teams, but like if they have a bad weekend here, they have one series against Northern Kentucky to figure it out, and then Paul Skeens and the Tigers are rolling in.
Ooh,
So, or actually, is that game? No, that's a home game. So LSU's rolling into Bluebell Park, and then the next weekend they got to travel to Knoxville, play Tennessee,
oh boy.
and then after
Oh
that,
man.
so they have number one LSU. The following weekend, number three Tennessee. The following weekend, number four Ole Miss,
Yeah, gotta
and then an
figure it out
Auburn,
real quick.
and then an Auburn team that people are saying should be a fringe or in the top 25. A Missouri team that beat a pretty decent Vanderbilt team and put up a fight against TCU.
I mean, at this point, you're just pretty. Every SEC team has a chance to beat every other SEC team. That's just how
Yeah, they're
baseball works.
their their easiest series after the Shriners after the Northern Kentucky series next week is Kentucky or Mississippi State.
Depending on, I mean, in Mississippi State, we haven't really uh, gotten a full taste of what they can do this season. Obviously,
So
horrible last season,
honestly,
but
I think I retract my statement. I think looking at what they
it's
got coming
panic
up,
mode.
they better be smashing that panic button. And Coach Wes Carroll said on his first interview with us, I think Schlossnagel's got to get on that bus and fire some bullets at these guys.
Talk about panic button for Evansville, like going 0 for, I think 0 for
Oh,
5. But
I think they got their first win on what, Saturday or Sunday?
yeah. So, but yeah, wrapping up A&M. I don't know. I think it's still a little bit too early. And to your point, brutal schedule coming up ahead, but that's for any SEC team. So, really going to have to prove it. Rutgers, team that was in a lot of people's conversation for up there with Maryland as favorite to contend for the Big Ten title this year, dropped their opening series to Campbell. Don't play a midweek, and then this weekend took 10 innings to beat George Mason 5-4, and then lost to Ball State and Boston College. They're sitting at 2-4. Is it too early to hit the panic button on Rutgers?
Um, no, I think now's the perfect time because I mean, granted, Campbell's Campbell. They're gonna stomp teams out. That's what they do. They beat big name teams for some reason. That's just how the Camels are. Taking 10 innings to beat George Mason and losing to Ball State and Boston College. Boston College is easily going to finish bottom of the ACC. And Rutgers is supposed to be the best Big Ten team coming into the season, them in Maryland. So I definitely think Rutgers should be worried a little bit. Now they do have somewhat of an easier schedule coming up because they got
I
UNC
mean,
Greensboro, but then
but
they got
then,
Georgia Southern,
yeah, and
and then
Mercer,
Mercer,
and then UConn.
and then UConn. Which actually
So,
I do plan on going to that UConn Rutgers
oh,
series.
nice.
I'm only about an hour and a half from stores.
Nice. Yeah. Tough for Rutgers. I mean, Maryland hasn't come out of the gates looking great. So, as far as like competition for the Big Ten, it's definitely not yet time to hit the panic button. But I'm not sure how many people really thought that Rutgers could contend for a regional hosting spot. But like
Well, I think
that,
them, they had that 40 plus win season last year and still they
right?
didn't even get into the tournament because the Big Ten only got one bid and it was Michigan because they won one game against Rutgers out of the whole season.
Yeah.
So I think Rutgers is once again not going to be playing baseball in Omaha. or even contending to play
or in
baseball in
June.
Omaha.
Well, yeah, it's tough because you look at a team like Maryland that's in the Big Ten will probably dominate their conference despite being overranked right now. And there are non-conference schedule, right? They're going down to Ole Miss to play at Ole Miss. Went down to USF, and then you can look at two Rutgers and Georgia Southern and Mercer, UConn are all pretty good teams from last year, but they're not a guaranteed RPI boost like SEC team like Ole Miss.
Which
So
I think might be one of the things that could hurt Wake Forest because being an ACC team, they don't play arguably one of the other top 2 to 3 teams in the ACC in Virginia. So they don't have that RPI booster playing either the 1 or 2 seed in the ACC.
yeah, I mean Wake Forest has been beaten up on scrubs for now. Obviously if they carry it over to the ACC play, then it won't matter what their RPI is if they win the ACC handily.
Well,
But
according to Warren Nolan, they're projected 56-0.
yeah, that will change eventually. Last one I want to talk about on the panic button: UCF sweeps Clemson at Clemson. And did you see any of Coach Bakic's post game conference?
I didn't see the post game conference, but I saw the post game celebration that UCF did,
Yes, ran
where
down the
they
hill.
ran down Clemson's hill, which I get it because it's Clemson.
You just muted yourself, buddy.
I know I thought I had to sneeze. Which I kind of don't get running down the Clemson football hill other than to just say you did it. But
Yeah,
also like Clemson's not like it's not like they beat a good I feel like that was we're talking about overreactions. That was an overreaction to a average win. Because it's not like Clemson is a powerhouse team. They're not contending in the ACC for a top spot.
sure. But they are one
UC,
of the a college of baseball kind of powerhouse historically, not recently, granted.
yeah. But I mean UCF I feel like is projected on the same level. I feel like you kind of
Has had
expect
more recent
UCF.
success, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like you kind of look at UCF and Clemson almost on the same scale, like they're decently even teams. So I feel like the celebration afterwards was a little overreaction.
Well, then you might appreciate Coach Bakic's comments. He basically, a reporter asked him how it felt to get swept at home. And keep in mind, this was um, Bakic's, I think, opening series at home. He said it left a bitter taste in our mouths after a sweep at home, especially since UCF was very mouthy in their celebrations on
Oh,
the
I did see
field.
that.
Yeah, we don't have to, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I feel like it's a little bit, that's your first series at home and you're supposed to be the new head coach. Like, I don't know if that's going to ingratiate you into like the fan base. Obviously, they just want to see wins. They don't care about the celebrations if you're getting swept at home. So, all right, moving on. The overreaction. A couple more statements. I'll get your take on, and then we can wrap it up here. Got a pretty good midweek slate actually to preview, but so we've talked a lot about Wake Forest, ECU, Texas A&M, a lot of schools here across the gambit. My overreaction statement is North Carolina by the end of the year, the state of North Carolina will be the best state in college baseball this year.
Oof.
Now, let me break this down for you. This year, North Carolina's got Wake Forest, ECU, UNC, and NC State are always competitive in the ACC, and Campbell. Um, Other traditional, really good baseball schools in college baseball, I'll give you a couple. Texas, Texas A&M, Tech, UT, Texas State last year. DBU's undefeated. California has been slipping a little bit recently. They still have UCLA, UCSB. UCI has had a good start to the year, and then obviously USC. Florida with University of Florida, Florida State, UCF. They're just so Clemson, Miami, or Mississippi after last year with Ole Miss winning the whole thing, Southern Miss being a good team, and maybe Mississippi State rebounding this year. What do you think?
So when you first said that question, the first state that popped in my head was Georgia Because last year the Bulldogs were running the show. Georgia Tech was hitting the ball out of this world. Georgia Southern was beating up on good teams, but Georgia has not looked like any type of a good team.
Yeah, great school, a great state for baseball, no doubt. But I think for the volume of very good programs, they're so far they haven't been on the same level
Yeah,
this year.
I think Campbell really puts it over the edge for North Carolina because I mean that's probably their worst name in the state as far as team names go, and I think they could beat the best team in a bunch of states.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
I don't think there's a top 25 team you would put against Campbell where you're not kind of thinking Campbell
Or you're
might
not
pull this off.
giving Campbell at least a game for sure.
Yeah, you're not you wouldn't put anyone in the top 25 against Campbell and go, oh, Campbell's getting swept this weekend.
Right.
You're always going to go, Campbell can take the series. Like they can do it. So I definitely think North Carolina is going to be the best baseball state. We'll see how many of them get in the top 10.
Yeah, I think it'll be obviously we won't be able to judge this until the end of the year, but at least with the track that these teams are on, I think North Carolina has a legitimate argument where Florida has a couple of very good teams. But Texas, the teams are trending not so great. I mean, Texas Tech is looking good, but and DBU is actually starting quite well. But Texas State, Texas, and Texas A&M have all kind of slipped a little bit to start the season. So we'll see how that one develops. But I thought it was an interesting question. The Red Raiders, Texas Tech will host a regional this year if they get their defense figured out. Overreaction, or that's being a bit optimistic?
Am I allowed to be biased on this one?
You can give a biased and a non-biased opinion.
Non or biased opinion, Texas Tech hosts a super regional, wins the super regional, is like the
Okay,
third
all
seed
right,
going
okay.
into Omaha.
There you go.
The non-biased
Very
opinion,
when he says biased, he means biased.
I mean extremely biased. Non-biased opinion, I definitely think they host a regional, maybe not a super regional. I mean, there's the only Big 12 competitor they have is right now Oklahoma State, who we didn't mention, did it again.
Yes.
They did it again. Um, TCU could be. Um, I mean, I think they go 1 or 2 seed in the Big 12, host a regional, probably get one of the shittier regionals that you kind of look at and you're like, that's a gauntlet. I think that's the kind of regional they're going to end up getting this year.
Well, I think it's a big if, right? Because they're putting up runs, and the Raiders almost always swing the bat very well. They're sitting right now in fourth in the country in runs per game, so very very high scoring offense. However,
Well, when you're in a desert and you can hit
yeah,
outside at the park for 12 months out of the year, gotta
correct.
have something to
But
show for it.
however, they are also averaging 3 errors per game. One of
It's
the
tough to watch too, and I said it after the opening weekend. They played
yes,
Gonzaga. They went down
I highlighted their
within
pitching,
the
and
first three
you
to
were
four innings.
highlighting their very very sloppy defense.
Yeah, it's honestly it's kind of hard to watch because you're just constantly like stressing out. Like if you're a Tech fan, you're watching it going, "Oh my God, why are we starting this game like this again?" And then they have to fight back. And I mean, once you start playing teams like Oklahoma State, TCU, you get your big non-conference midweek games against Grand Canyon. Like if they don't figure out their pitching, I think pitching more so than the defense is going to be the bigger problem. I think part of the defensive problem is you got a lot of guys that didn't play together last year. So like figuring out, from a baseball player perspective, like figuring out how to communicate with each other, how to work together on the field. I think that will kind of come in the next couple weeks. So I'm not super worried about the errors as much. Because like the errors they're making aren't like just missing ground balls between the legs. Like they're just making communication errors more than anything. So I think the pitching is what's going to hurt them the most.
That's interesting. I mean, I was going to say I think it's a big if. Obviously, as you play better teams, that defense you can't win with 3 errors a game, but it also feeds into the pitching where like you feel like you have to strike everybody out because you're concerned that the defense isn't going to hold up behind you. I've been there. We've all been there. So TBD on the Red Raiders. We'll see if their pitching and defense improves. We know they're going to swing it. Two more. Here's one. We're going to have 3 ACC teams enter conference play undefeated this year. Overreaction or realistic? Right now,
Wake
NC
Forest,
State,
UVA.
in UVA and Wake Forest are all undefeated. So NC State, I didn't take down everybody's midweeks, but NC State has a series against NJIT before getting into the ACC. Virginia has a series against Rhode Island, and Wake Forest has a scrub tournament at home, but they have a midweek against Coastal Carolina.
Who's NC? Let me see who NC State's midweek is against, because I think that's going to be the big question. I think NC State's the one that if they're going to lose a game, it'll probably be NC State. Let's see, Wagner, Coastal, Belmont, Longwood, who got the Longwood from Virginia
again.
So, and then NJIT and then ACC play. I think that's a fair statement. I think a funner question would be over under on Virginia runs going into ACC play over under 6,000.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a team, NC State right now is not as dominant as the other two have been. So if you had to pick a team to lose a game here or there, I would probably go with the Wolfpack.
Well, Virginia's got VMI, and didn't VMI beat somebody last season, like a top-ranked team?
Anybody could. I mean, who knows? Anybody could have. But yeah, we'll see how those undefeated ones turn out. Georgia Tech obviously still undefeated, but I think they're playing a tougher midweek. I can't recall. But they're playing the University of Georgia this weekend.
Honestly, they should sweep that series the way Georgia's been playing.
Yeah, I've not been playing that well. So Georgia will probably run this, or Georgia Tech will probably run the state of Georgia since they already beat Georgia Southern in a midweek. Okay. Last topic, and I saved this one for last for a reason. So one of the things we forgot to mention or neglected to mention on LSU's opening weekend, the first game they won, Kansas State. Did you saw how they won that game, right? It was a walk-off pitch clock violation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of this trend right now on college baseball Twitter. It was very prevalent last weekend too. In Globe Life was the place it was kind of really being publicized, and then with spring training kicking off in the MLB, there was a lot of clips circulating on Twitter. What are your thoughts on the pitch clock being implemented more strictly in college and in MLB this year?
So I kind of tend to agree with I think you and Sue just both said the same thing essentially, where it's fine with no outs or 1 out, but when it comes to a big game situation, like I don't want a game to end because the batter was not looking at the pitcher. Because, like, I don't forget which game it is, but there was one where the batter never left the box. The pitcher steps on the rubber with, like, 9 seconds left. So then the hitter, taps the plate, does whatever he does. But because he wasn't looking at the pitcher when it hit 8 seconds, he was out. So somebody pointed out on Twitter, it's not just the ball's got to be thrown within 15 seconds. There's a whole lot of caveats that have to happen at certain time, like time points in that 15 seconds. I would like to see not having the pitch clock in like tournament games come, Big Ten tournament, SEC tournament at the end of the season, or in like regional, super regionals. Because to somebody else's point that I saw on Twitter, forgot who it was. If I'm in the bottom of the ninth in a super regional and I got a runner on second and third, I don't want to rush my pitch selection. I want to be able to clearly think through it, figure out what I want to throw, take my time, calm myself down first. And actually, what I didn't even think of until I saw a video of it. Eric Sims, king of JUCO, he made a fantastic point on the pitch clock. With 15 seconds, pitchers are starting to really hurry up their deliveries, throwing faster, which in turn, when you're working out, if I'm doing 3 sets of 10 and I cut my rest time down to 30 seconds, 15 seconds in between sets, my third set's not going to be as good versus if I have a minute rest between. So pitchers are going to start putting more stress on their arms quicker into games, which is going to lead to less starters going deep in games and cause more injuries.
Yeah,
What's your thought
so
on that one?
I'll let me my statement that I was going to run by, and then I'll give you my thoughts. I think that the pitch clock is going to end a team's playoff run this year. Like I think,
Oh, 100%.
yeah, I mean, there's going to be a big moment. You're going to try to slow the game down, and it's a team's going to get sent home
And I
because of the
and I
pitch
think
clock.
it's going to be similar to the situation I just talked about, where the hitter's in the box, but he's not looking. He's looking at the plate, not the pitcher. And then it's going to be the hitting team, because I don't know if I just haven't seen the videos, but I haven't seen a lot of pitchers
Mhm.
get a 3-ball walk. But I've
There
seen a lot of
was,
hitters get
yeah,
2-strike strikeouts.
yeah. So here's my thoughts. I think overall it is a good thing for the game, right? Like pace of play is for me, it's not a problem, but I can understand when you have the people that are egregious. Like I saw James Karinchak for the MLB, like got up on the mound, like tossed the ball to himself 4 times, and then got a different. Like I don't want to see that. It's not a good viewing experience, and consistency is a good thing. Like I respect the fact that you're trying to implement it in just here's the rule, and no matter what the setting is, we're going to apply it consistency and or consistently and fairly. So I do respect that. On the injury part, I'm not really concerned on that as much, and maybe this is more of well, this applies to the MLB and in college as well, but it bothers me that in the major league game and in college a little bit we're seeing fewer and fewer starting pitchers go longer than 5 innings just because you're being asked now not to get through a lineup 3 times but to give like 110% every pitch, and if you max out at 100 pitches in 5 innings then that's okay because we've got relievers that are trained to give 100% for 1 inning. And I personally like I like it when starting pitchers go deeper into games. I like the seeing a batter 3-4 times, the battle, the strategy that goes on each at bat, building on what happened the at bat before. So I'm not opposed to asking pitchers to throw 1 or 2 miles an hour slower, not stress out your arm, and prioritize control and pitchability a little bit more than just raw stuff. So, but that is just a personal preference. So anyone listening is at liberty to disagree and say, I prefer to watch a different product. But what I will say is that there's a reason that the NFL, you can't end a game on a delay of game. And that's in the NFL game for a reason too, right? You can't have teams taking 60 seconds in between plays. It's not fair. It's not a good viewing experience. But you can never end a game on a penalty. And to like just lay it out in bare terms, right? The reason why that is, it is egregious in my mind to end a game on a resolution that was out of the control of the players, right? When the play and the game is taken out of control of the players, nobody feels good. Like the winners don't like it, the losers really don't like it. It's just not a good situation. And in particular, the baseball, in my opinion, what baseball really is the best at is prolonging its high pressure moments. Like in the World Series, obviously you watch a baseball game, and the beautiful thing about baseball is the game can be won on a 1-0 pitch in the third inning with 1 out, or it can be won in the bottom of the ninth with 2 strikes and a runner on base. You never know what pitch is going to be the one that decides the game. However, I think this is the solution that you discussed a little bit. That I just feel like an at bat can't be ended on a penalty, and I understand that you would not be addressing all pitches with the pitch clock. But again, not all at bats go to two strikes. Like a lot are resolved on earlier counts. And when you get to two strikes, the pitcher's trying to think of the sequencing, the batter's trying to think through their scouting information. And like some of my favorite memories are watching like the World Series, whether it's college or MLB, and having a two strike count and seeing the batter step out, take, and you can see the gears grinding. Like
Yeah.
in the biggest moments of the sport, baseball is naturally excellent at prolonging those and making you experience one pitch or one at bat over several minutes at a super high level of tension. So I don't want to see that go away. And I don't want to see that be sacrificed for pace of play when you're resolving at bats, on a penalty. So those are my thoughts. I feel like it could be a very simple solution that still increases pace of play, that eliminates the viral clips of like, can you believe this guy just got out because he wasn't in the batter's box?
Yeah. And, to the video that everyone's pointed out where they, overlay how many inside the park home runs can Jose Altuve hit before this pitch is thrown. Like, I don't know. I've never met somebody that was like, I really enjoyed this baseball game for 2 hours and 15 minutes, but then after that, I just didn't really want to watch it. Like if you're watching a game for 2 hours and 15 minutes, you don't care if it goes another 45 minutes. I never once heard anybody say, I'd rather spend 45 minutes less at the ballpark. So I don't think there was even a need or a reason to add a pitch clock.
I think a pitch clock, I think it should be in the game, but I don't think it should be as quick as it is. And I certainly don't think that we should be deciding at bats and innings upon it. I think Tyler Matzek of the Braves had a really good tweet about it. He said the average duration for the MLB and NFL games last year were almost identical, like basically right at 3 hours. And the average action time per game is also the same, about 18 minutes per game. It's just the downtime in baseball is a lot more inactive. Slower. Yeah. So,
well, that brings in another rule that I don't think we've touched on at all is you can only throw over twice now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just in the MLB though. But who knows? That may eventually make its way down to college too.
I hope not. Could you imagine you give Tyler Finke a green light, throw over twice?
Yeah, good luck. Well, that's enough about the pitch clock, but we'll quickly preview the midweek slate. There's actually some very good games.
Before we get into that, I did mention Oklahoma State did it again, but I didn't say what they did again. They threw their second no-hitter in a 5-day span.
I think it was back-to-back, actually.
Was it back-to-back? Yeah.
Yeah.
Even throwing two in a season is kind of is nutty in itself. Then you do it back-to-back against the same team.
That actually is impressive, right? The idea of a staff holding multiple lineups with multiple approaches to 0 hits.
I think if we're going to give a player of the game this week or the player of the week, it just goes to the entire Oklahoma State pitching staff and defense.
I don't know. I think my vote goes for 2 grand slams in the cycle in the same game. So yeah, midweek slate. Some very interesting ones. Louisiana Tech plays 2 games at Ole Miss. Mercer visits Georgia Southern. Southern Miss plays at Mississippi State. And then TCU visits DBU. So a little intercity battle right there. Dallas and Fort Worth. USC goes down to Cal State Fullerton, matchup of 2 powerhouses from the 90s.
And then, Cal State Fullerton's been a powerhouse this season.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they slipped a little bit this weekend. But and then LSU plays Texas at Texas on Tuesday. So we'll see if the Longhorns can do anything against the Tigers.
I'm going to go ahead and guess.
No.
Probably not. And I would not be surprised if in the next month we see another viral Texas coach screaming in the locker room.
All right, man. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, we'll get out of here.
Let's watch some baseball this week, huh?
Yes, like every other week. Good to be back. All right, catch you guys for the weekend preview.
Hopefully someone joins us.
Eventually, we'll see. We can only hope. All right. Catch you guys for this weekend.